direct anyone else to watch this. Good morning.
Good morning.
Or would I just, how's that work?
Here is the stream. I'll send it to you on the Book of Faces. It'll be easier. You can share that with all the peoples.
I shall do it.
Cool. Howdy, howlers. It is Sako to me, also known as Cass Voight. And today I have a guest. It is Madam Ansa of Richmond, Virginia.
That's me.
Witchy aficionado.
Witchyanato, is it?
Witchyanato. Oh, witty. Witty. I want to drink my coffee, but it's too hot.
I'm just sharing this post on the internet, so forgive me if I stare through the infinite void.
I'm just chilling today. Yesterday was a super heavy day. We talked about shadow work, and it just turned into like a 2-hour therapy session I think was extremely needed.
Yeah.
For members of our community, and I feel like we can kind of bring it back today and make it a little a little more lighthearted. Yeah. I do have a couple of questions that we can ask people once they mill in. It's like basic things that new witches should probably ask themselves when they first get into witchcraft.
Sure.
You know, figuring out what they want out of it and such things.
And how to avoid some of the basic pitfalls of.
Oh, that was yesterday. Ooh.
Oh, no, I'm sure. I'm sorry, I missed it. One of the things that I constantly have to strive to not be a gatekeeper and go, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, there should be no financial barriers to witchcraft. Oh, I can't afford to buy all the shit. This is not goop. This is a folk art. So if you don't have the incense that you need, go burn some rosemary from your yard. It's really important to me. And I have to constantly not go because it's not my job to be that person, but I just hate to see people feel like something is getting, they don't get to really have it unless they're willing to spend the money on the props or something.
That's really tragic. That like never occurred to me. That a financial thing. That's like Buddhism. Like, you can have money and you can spend it in the store and you can buy the beads and the gohonzon and the butsudan and all the crazy stuff that goes around it, but you don't need any of that stuff. Like not really. So
yeah,
it's just stuff.
Yeah. I call it goop witchcraft, the commercialization of something that, but is it doing it right? Like, if we look at what we know of the historical roots of witchcraft in the Western world, and it's like, you're talking about poor people, who were not waiting to special order virgin candles made from such and such by so-and-so. They literally went, what do I have that's green? Do I have anything that's green? So much do it yourself. And sure, if you could, I wonder if some of that need for like things to be, we're allowed to like nice things, but if you feel like you're not legit, if you don't have fancy stuff, that might have its roots in the whole business with witchcraft being reinvented as a fantasy, in the Victorian and Edwardian period, where English people were making a kind of a spiritual parody of Christianity. Like, we have to have fancy candlesticks and we have to have fancy garments, as if any poor witch in any, small town in Sicily or whatever ever had fancy candlesticks for the holidays,
Right, exactly.
Again, you can have those things, but
stick it in a bottle. Shit.
Right? Pile of dirt.
Pile of dirt, absolutely.
That's my brand of witchcraft. Pile of dirt.
That would be a really great talk, is like witchcraft on the down low, like
right
on a budget, as it were.
Or when people are trying to do things under the radar,
Oh yeah.
That's, you know,
We don't have to all be like wearing black and wearing hats and carrying brooms and stuff like that. Like, you can still be Barbie and still be witchy.
toodles. I mean, you know, I've been reading a lot of Gordon White, and, you know, a big part of his personal approach is like he does a lot of his work with deity and so forth through the Catholic saints. You know, he's like that's how people have had these energies in the open for thousands of years as part of the heritage. It's hard for me because I personally am triggered by all the Christian imagery and so forth. So I'm actually trying to deconstruct some of my.
There's a lot of like callback to Christianity or Catholicism in some way, in chaos magic specifically, with work with demons and angels and saints and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's like leftover dogma from a previous life. Like it which I feel like defeats the idea of the no dogma, like to bring this stuff in. Yeah.
Again, if it works for you, that's great. But if you're, you know, if anyone ever wants to say it has to be this way, I encourage you to go back to the part where chaos at least started with people like praying to Spider-Man or whatever.
Yeah.
And getting results, you know, and then realizing that, you know, it's kind of cool when you've got something with thousands of years of energy behind it, whereas, you know, Spider-Man only has decades, you know, but then it's
agreed. Yeah.
You know.
Agreed.
Ooh.
I hear cats.
Mm-hmm. They've been very active.
Yes, mine too. Mine too.
So, also on my own mind, as far as like definitely a learning curve, is the gardening aspect. I know, interestingly, a ton of people in culture across the globe right now who have been trapped at home, who have never had any interest in plants or chickens or whatever,
are doing it.
Yeah, great, because fuck the man, you know. But also because, you know, it is literally seizing means of production, to make a joke. But also it's a chance to go, oh, right, because that's what it actually looks like when you're home long enough to see a plant go through its transformation. It's not just a hypothetical metaphor of like, you're like a seed and a sprout and a thing and a fruit. You know, we use these metaphors, and lots of us have never had the luxury to actually see that play out in real time. And if the quarantine has given some of us anything, it's, you know, that's a different use of time. Let's say it's given that to everyone, a different use of time. And so, all these folks who are interested in the, like, oh, if you keep, it's like just like kids and pets. If you keep showing up and like watering plants and giving them food and stuff, then they continue to live. And then suddenly you've got a little witchy herb garden or whatever.
Yeah. Our garden is actually doing really well despite the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though my husband is like going out in the evenings and watering it and, you know, doing the thing. But their flourishing is better than they have in years past. That's for sure. Especially the sage. The sage is doing great. We
had something. We have a little. Carmel and I have an herb garden that we've just tried to be filled with culinary herbs, but also some witchy things specifically. And 2/3 of the things are doing great, and 1/3 of them are being devastated by some kind of little bugs that specifically want to eat all of your rue. I was like, who eats rue? Somebody ate all the dill, you know.
Oh.
So meanwhile, they decided to leave the catnip alone, I guess. So we have this very spotty, like, wormwood is fine. The white sage is being eaten. I'm like, who are you that loves these menthol-y herbs? But in general, mostly it's been an experiment that I would call successful.
Nice.
Yeah, and for Carmel, anyone who is watching lives with me here in Awesome Town, so we have a real live person to talk to about witch things all the time, day and night. She also has not really been a person who's ever had a garden. She's like an international performer, and so, you know, we just started picking up like, sure, wormwood. Let's get that. Let's find out what it's like to live with a wormwood plant. That's awesome. Like, yeah. Wormwood's my favorite. Like, right? if there's going to be an intoxicant, like to put in like the handwriting salve or whatever, wormwood, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's why I was like, you know, with the wormwood and the rue, and I also got nettles, which, you know, don't bump into it in the dark, but it's, just a great thing to have in your corner.
Mm-hmm.
In the corner where you don't run into it.
Yeah.
Short shorts. I wanted to get some of the ugly prickly herbs in here too, as well as the, like salvia, which is so pretty and, is good for the butterflies and so forth.
Yeah. Lavender, maybe.
Yes. I've got a couple different kinds of lavender, all of which are trying not to be decimated by chickens, because the chickens like to get in there, and I think they kick it up and then it smells good. And they literally crash out in between the lavender and the rosemary in these little dust baths they make.
Oh,
I'm sure it smells wonderful.
I'm sure it does. Yeah.
Lavender's a little like, chicken's so big.
Yeah. Currently, I have spearmint trying to smother out my hardy English lavender.
Ooh.
It's really obnoxious.
I'll take some.
Great, because I have way too much, and keeping it controlled, like it's taking over my sidewalk, my steps, trying to take over the sidewalk that's not part of my house. Like,
right.
It's freaking everywhere.
Yeah, we got Corsican mint, which is worth Googling it up. It's like if you saw really big mint really far away. It's tiny. It's like micro mint, a little tiny thing, and it spreads out in this mat. And almost like it's like a very low ground cover. It's all of an inch off the ground, maybe. It's what they use to make creme de menthe.
Oh, cool!
A special kind of Corsican mint, and so it looks like it was meant to fill out the the bottom story of the fairy kingdom kind of thing. So I would love to have that cover everything.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So cool.
I feel that way about thyme. If I could just like cover my yard in thyme, like that would be, especially when it starts blooming and like doing all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Be great.
Rosemary and thyme. I know people cook with it too, but I'm slow to know, except for rosemary and basil, which we have so much basil. Thai basil, Genovese basil. My partner decided he'd like to switch the local currency over to the basil standard, because then we would be people of means. Instead of at the mint, you'd be making basil at the basilry. But anyway, yeah, like I know what to do with a couple of those culinary herbs, but when it comes to like thyme and marjoram, I have to admit I don't even really know what one cooks with them.
Oh, interesting. I use thyme on a lot of things, chicken, pork. Which is mostly what I eat is chicken and pork. With the lack of beef in my diet, like kind of, brings requirements down.
Right. Well, what are some of the other topics that you guys have discussed in this setting, since I'm not normally awake and available at this time?
Pretty much everything that I have in my grimoire or my book of shadows, though I'll probably do a video proper about sanctums and guardians.
Ooh, yeah.
I'm doing a series about hedge writing in August.
Great.
And I am releasing the thought forms stuff that we covered in this month.
Great.
So that is what I'm doing for release schedule. However, the kind of stuff that I discuss here is like invoking certain deities or answering questions about like spells or paradigm or dreams. Yeah.
I just had this, it occurs to me. I'm a big fan of the animated series Puss in Boots. I don't watch a lot of TV, but if you haven't watched it, it's hilarious. There's a lot of jokes in there for the adults. But anyway, I was just watching the wrap-up of Puss in Boots, and one of the characters who is the little goblin kid that you learn to love, it turns out she's not. She's a servant entity, and at the end they talk about how she's actually one of a series of tulpas that the wizard built to do to take care of this very important magic job. And I was like, how did I not remember that this was part of Puss in Boots?
Wow, that is oddly specific.
Yes, and she's and she's supposed to be a goblin, and the goblin people in that series, by the way, all dress like 80s Hot Topic goths. Like they're gardeners, but they're covered in spikes and like crazy jewelry, and they wear like giant boots and stuff. But they're like really good gardeners, so they're out there and they're like Hot Topic Christmas tree spike, like planting squashes or whatever. So
Nice.
anyway,
I'll have to give it a watch. What the heck?
The series opens with a Sphinx who really her secret desire is to do something. I just want to do something meaningful and help people. I could be a tattoo artist. She's a big hairless cat, so she's got like all this sort of tribal black work all over her. So
that's hilarious.
It's pretty funny. So anyway, tulpas was the point. I was like, oh,
tulpas
right.
was the point. Yeah,
that was the kickoff point.
Yeah.
So have you set yourself like a personal schedule as far as like what you're working with personally, or just what you're like what you're sharing with your people?
What I'm sharing, well, my videos I plan, but in general, I just like open up my grimoire and be like, we can talk about working with the dead. We can, hey, Jace Maxwell, it's awesome seeing you.
Good morning.
And Shelby and Moonstruck. It is awesome seeing you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out. We are just shooting the shit and drinking coffee.
We are indeed.
Especially since yesterday was so heavy. Let's bring some lightheartedness back to the conversation.
We've been talking about Puss in Boots and gardening.
If you have not caught the beginning of this stream, this is Madame Ansa of Awesome Town, Richmond, Virginia. She is well-versed in chaos magic and also tarot. She, if you are unfamiliar with tarot decks in general,
I made that.
This is her deck. Yep, absolutely. The World Spirit Tarot. I will probably put a link to the store in the chat at some point.
That'd be great. I have a website now that Carmel built for me, theworldspirittarot.com.
Theworldspirit.com.
Worldspirittarot.com.
Tarot.com.
Yeah. But yes. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. We're just spending some time catching up. Sako and I usually work together in the pre-Rona times. We work together like once a month or so, face to face, and not so much.
Not for lack of want, let me tell you.
Absolutely. No, it's just for trying to make decisions about what constitutes safe.
Yeah. I have considered maybe hanging out, like social distancing with masks and stuff like that, like in your yard.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Like do a fire.
Sure. We actually just did that with some friends 2 nights ago. We had a big bonfire, and we've got our Antifa Lounge balcony. We have it set up so that people can climb to the balcony up a ladder. So it's more like boarding a ship. That way you don't have to go through the house to get up in the balcony, and it's long enough that if we sit on one end and folks sit in the other end, we can hang out in the it's covered in fairy lights and pennants, and it's kind of a tiki-like setting. So we basically went from there for the hang around in chairs part, and then came down to the bonfire part. Where if you've got a big enough fire between you, then you're not getting up close.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great.
Madam Ansa.
And I'm acutely aware that even having a yard for that during this time is a privilege. And I know a lot of folks are.
I do not have such a space.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's partly why you've been so good about using, the cyberspace in order to make it a place to share information, connect with people, bring people together. Because, of course, that in itself is a privilege, I guess, because not everybody has access to the internet because America. But, every time I feel pent up and frustrated about the limitations of Corona times, I try to remember, keeping it in the galactic perspective. Just having a yard is a big deal. Just having people who understand your interests, so you're not the only person in a pre-internet world in your small town with no one to talk to.
Yeah, no kidding.
Unlike when we were kids, when many of us were kids anyway.
Well, yeah. Like cell phones and internet were barely a thing when I was a kid, right? So
I didn't get a phone until my dance troupe was like, here's our annual review for the director. Everything is good. We like the stuff you do, blah, 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 blah. You have to go to cell phone.
I was well into college when I got my first cell phone.
Yeah. And of course my kids have them. And my kids are also like, oh,
yeah.
You know.
Oh my God, Mom.
You know, and not because they're basic, but they're just like, grown-up things are intrinsically boring. It's like, fire eating, boring. Sort of performers, boring.
Until they get like separate and they actually see what boring is. And then they'll be like, wait, why did I not appreciate this crap when I was younger?
I can certainly hope that will be the case.
Yeah.
Right now they're just like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm setting up for a ritual. And they're like, okay, can I go? I'm going to go play Fortnite.
Yeah. Which is cool. Like that they're like, you do your thing. We'll be off playing Fortnite.
Right. I like to think that what it does do is that normalizes it for them. You know, here's a little side note. One of the things that I have noticed as a parent, and I've noticed for some other people's kids, because some of us come to alternative religions and so forth. Some people just wander into it. Some people, are called to it. Some people arrive here as a response to some kind of like very heavy-handed dogmatic upbringing. And what I've noticed with families, even families where the parents super identify as, neo-pagan or whatever, they're so keen to not dogmatize their kids that their kids don't actually learn their parents' values. Like the parents are so busy sort of not imprinting on their kids that like I've known people whose kids the kids assumed that their families were Christian like everybody else.
Oh.
Because their mom did such a job of keeping it to herself, like maybe this is an altar and maybe you don't know, or maybe I go outside myself and do a little something, during the solstice or whatever, but like I don't want to impose it on my kids, or I don't want to make it weird for my kids, or I don't want to make my kids feel awkward around other kids here in suburbia. And so they don't pass their values on at all. And the kids are like, my mom's a fucking witch. I was like, perhaps you may be overcompensating on the non-dogmatization because your kids, it's like speaking another language and then not speaking it around your kid because you don't want them to feel ignorant. Like,
or also, like my dad, for instance, he didn't speak Japanese until well into his adulthood.
Yeah.
And he asked his mother, like, why did you not teach me when I was a kid?
Yeah.
And his mother was like, well, we came to America. We came to stateside. We're in America now. Like, what the hell do you need Japanese for? Like,
right? That's such a classic. I mean, my ex-husband, same thing. His family, they spoke French. He never spoke French because they just wanted him to, be normal.
Assimilate, like just.
And work hard to learn something that you could have learned when it was easy, right? And so I hope that by letting my kids, I'm like, hey, we're having a bond.
At least have the option, at least normalize your practice.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you could be like, oh, what are these squiggles? That's a sigil. And they're like, oh, that's cool. That'd make a nice tattoo. Moving on with their day. They can have their own values, but at least they're not going to be like, what?
Yeah. So hello to Destiny. It is awesome seeing you this morning. I am extra glad that you could make it this morning, especially considering you were up late last night as well. We're just like, yesterday was super heavy, so we're just chilling out today.
Just chatting around the block.
Chatting around the block.
Chatting around the neighborhood.
Oh, forgot to plug my Computron back in.
Yes, I realized I was at 8%, which is why I took you on the dizzy and walked through the house trying to find a charger. Because my partner does so many shows online, there's a whole studio of sorts set up in the other room with all the cords and the cables and the mics and the things. It's like, I don't need any of that. I just need this. Where is it?
Yeah.
For the Computron, I like that.
For the Computron, yeah. Oh my goodness. Destiny says with oatmeal cookie and Earl Grey tea in kitty cat mug.
Aw.
And it has ears. I have a bat mug, but it looks like a cat because it doesn't have wings.
Of course.
So it has the ears, it has the little teeth, and, and I'm like, it's a cat. I think it's in the dishwasher right now, but otherwise I'd show you.
This is the coffee cup that people bring me when they want to see if I'm awake, because this is, while it's a lovely item, it's
a little warped.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's an artful choice, but if you're like trying to walk through the house and not spill your coffee or whatever.
I'm a terrible waitress. I just, yeah.
With tall sides. Minimize the sloshing.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
So my Keurig, I have a Keurig, right? So I use these like big ass mugs.
Yeah.
This is my, you know, but it only stops like here.
Right.
so I can like take it downstairs and have my morning cigarette or whatever and not worry about sloshing it everywhere. And yet I still manage to, because there are stains everywhere and I need to mop them up or something. Oh my gosh, it's my sister. Holy crap.
Oh, that's great.
Destiny has not been asleep yet. Holy crap.
Oh,
was that on the porch having first cup of tea on the second now? Good to be here. So glad that you're here.
Yes, absolutely.
So glad. And also, hello, Courtney.
It's the fellowship of the mug.
Fellowship of the mug. Sako is a klutz. To a degree. To a degree.
Well, I was saying, I'm only graceful if I'm getting paid. Like, if I'm on stage performing, if I'm teaching a class, everywhere else, I'm entirely likely to, you know, whack my shin bone on the trailer hitch and be like, that's right, dance teacher. Used to be a dance teacher. Bam.
Oh, my goodness.
I've been personally trying hard to, because we've been doing so much magic talk at the house, like all day, every day, trying to really just select a few things that I can commit to working on consistently. Because, you know, if you've got a short list of like, well, I should be, you know, I should be shoaling and I should be meditating and I should be, you know, doing work at the crossroads and I should be, and, you know, liminal dreaming or whatever, all of these things. And I can't actually sustain all of them and still fulfill my other obligations. Like I can't do them all at once because, you know, I've got kids and whatnot. And the corona times are surprisingly busy. So I know for me, I've been trying to choose what I can commit to now and not just kind of dilettante my way around like 2 days of this and 1 day of that. Like I know that for me,
I have like a hierarchy of things that I'm good at.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I know about a ton of shit. But there's like a couple of things that like I feel like are indicative of my paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just now coming to terms with that idea that there are only so many hours in the day, only so many days in the month. And
you can only pull so many all-nighters like Destiny, and like, you know, you can only do that so often and still meet your other commitments.
Yeah, and Courtney is right. Prioritizing is harder than it sounds, especially when trying to figure out what it is you are good at, what it is that you know really well,
mm-hmm.
And have experience with, and want to have more experience with. Yeah, absolutely. Shelby asks, were you guys raised as witchy/pagan, or did you discover it that yourself? I came about it on my own. And yet it was sort of influenced by family. Okay, so when I was born, my dad said, she's going to be Buddhist. And my mom said, she's going to be whatever the fuck she wants to be. And and my mom was raised Lutheran, had problems with the church and left the church. But her family have like a lineage of witchydom. Like my great grandmother apparently could look at a woman and like be able to tell if she was pregnant and whether it would be a boy or a girl, you know, stuff like that. My mom used to throw cards. It was her deck that I stole when I was 13 and she's like, well, I guess I'm giving it to you. But Yeah, like I was like 12 or 13 when I first started getting into it, throwing cards. Cards were my gateway.
Yeah.
And then family was nurturing, very understanding. Anything that I got into that was questionable, they researched on their own so that they could make an informed decision.
That's charming.
They didn't have like because when I started getting into Vampire the Masquerade, they were like, "Oh, well, people who play World of Darkness games are unstable," and I was like, "That is bullshit," and because they say the same thing about D&D. So,
sure, yeah, absolutely.
So here's the main book. Go
Mhm.
ahead and read it. Tell me what you think after that. And they were like, "This is actually a really well-informed game. Can I play?" Yes, I have the Morgan. I'm pretty sure I have the Morgan Greer deck.
Oh yeah.
That was my first deck. Was the Morgan Greer deck. I never learned. I've never thrown the Rider Waite deck.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to Morgan Greer, which was particularly dark. At least the mojo on that deck was, the hopes and fears position. It was always fears, and always fears. Pessimistic deck, absolutely. And so Robin Wood and Morgan Greer are like my two that I can, and my own, of course.
Sure.
That I can like throw without any like weird gibberish. That I actually have a connection to, that I can actually, like divine with.
Right.
Recently and that deck rejected her. Yeah. Eventually.
The first deck I ever used was the Aquarian Tarot, which is quite. I don't actually own one now. I probably should. I have a zillion decks, but that's not one. I don't know now whether it would read. Now that I'm a better reader, I don't know how it is for actually reading. It looks like every card was designed to be someone's tattoo. It's like they're beautiful, beautiful and iconic in that sort of Mucha sort of style. But I didn't know anything about the tarot at the time. I just thought, whoa, pictures.
Art. Yeah. I think that's why I got into it, was because of the art, and then was like, oh, there's like stuff you can do with this. Destiny says they came at it at 9. A woman came to me and talked to me. My family is Catholic. I did not tell them about my spirituality until I was 25. It was when I was on my own. I'm now 38. High five, 38.
Absolutely.
And the lady still comes to me and guides me. That is awesome that you have a mentor.
Yeah, sure.
Because not everybody, like me, for instance, like not everybody gets a mentor. Like you basically have to, like I had to teach myself. And that's a lot of reading. That's a lot of years of like trial and error.
Filtration.
Yeah.
A lot of going, this is worth keeping. This is not. This might be good for someone. This is not good for me. This is garbage. This is ill-informed or ill-intended. This is fabulous.
Right. Exactly. And blogs are like the way of it now. Whereas I used to go to like bookstores and hit the New Age section and just sit down in the middle of the aisle and read these books.
Sure.
And it was really easy to tell what was preposterous bullshit and like what was like legit. And in the 90s and part of the 80s, like there was a lot of like Sylvia Brown and Silver Raven Wolf and a lot of, oh God, what was the last one? The Modern Witch's Handbook, which was like, that was some bullshit. That was some epic bullshit. The black cover with the yellow text. Like,
I'm not familiar with the cover, but just your eyebrows about it are hilarious.
Shelby was raised in a super Christian household, but parents don't have a problem with my practice. That's excellent. Like, because I feel like Christians and Catholics are the first to jump on conversion. like, oh no, your soul needs to be saved, or you've sold your soul to the devil. That's that sort of thing. Like a conjure, Appalachian conjure. Like I've been like studying into that and crossing over with John Edward. Yeah, no kidding. Ray Buckland,
Right.
it was a plagiarist, but he was his Big Blue Book is basically the Bible of the Wiccan community. So I wouldn't. It is, well, preposterone to a degree in the sense that it is very specifically a dogma.
That for me is the rub, is finding someplace between respecting folkways and going like, I'm not one who says at this point that it's fair that everyone can have everything. I think we've established as a culture that there are times and places when you have to be sensitive about what information you feel entitled to access. Anything with the word entitled in it has to be considered. And as a chaos person, that's a big deal because, of course, chaos people are like, what? I do what I want. But you don't have to be a dick about it. And so trying to make informed choices about what is appropriate for you to use and what is worth giving the time of day to, and then still having a healthy relationship with dogma. Because of course, every time somebody says you can't ever, I'm like, you can't tell me what to do. Maybe
chaos magic is a dogma in and of itself. Like, whatever.
Right, that's the thing. And anytime anyone is makes monolithic statements, you can never. Everyone always does this. I'm always like, any writer who says those things, unless it's like for safety, like, never turn the gas on in your house and then stand there forever with a lighter. Okay, that makes sense. But that's not like somebody's moral imperative trying to translate for the spirit world. That's just physics,
Yeah.
Like real obvious, basic, not quantum weirdo physics, but like, so. For myself coming up, my family was irreligious. My mother was a survivor of Catholic Church abuse. And so my parents didn't care, but I had a very strong religious impulse as a kid. And I dragged my family I dragged them to church and so forth. And I became a Unitarian, which is basically the closest you can get to being a neo-pagan and still be in the church, I think, as a young person. And I thought about going into the ministry, actually, at a point in my life. But I had too many paranormal experiences to stay in that path. And my family basically said, oh, yeah, all that stuff's real. But you don't want to get involved in that. It'll make your life complicated. Why make
you were like, complicate my life?
Right. Yeah. Why make your life harder? Why would you make your life harder by dealing with telepathy and dead things and stuff? Don't do that. So I of course went pew towards the weird shit.
Yeah, I gotcha. So Destiny says it's not a person on this side that they found that they can see spirits and the dead. I could, in my younger years, as I've gotten older and taken more meds and stuff like that, my vision is not as piercing as it once was. It took me a long time to tell the difference. Now I know just by looking, they look so alive at the time. Yeah. Courtney, Super does not like Ray Buckland.
Yes.
I totally get it. Mother was okay with it. Grandmother took her a while, kind of a mix with the Native American culture. I wonder, do you have Native American in your lineage somewhere? Or did you go on reservation and I don't know. I wish to know more. Well, I came out as atheist quite a while ago. So I guess they're just used to it by now. There were tears when I initially told them I wasn't Christian anymore.
Sure.
For pretty much everyone that I know that went to Catholic school or Christian schooling in some way, they are not religious anymore. Or they are not Christian anymore.
Yeah, I know that for my mother-in-law is the classic little Sicilian Catholic lady, and she's the nicest person. She's what Christians should be. She's on the interfaith committee and she volunteers and she does all the things. And none of her children are religious. And I know it's hard for her because she has to either question what the Pope says, which is that you're all going to hell, or she has to basically live in a world where she has to, in order for her to have her faith and still not worry about her family all the time and drive them nuts, she had to come to some kind of internal accommodation. I don't envy her that, because she lives in a dogmatic world, right? There are rules, and every one of her kids is like, oh, hell no, with the Catholic. So I don't envy her that challenge.
I think Catholicism is an interesting mythology, but it's just not my bag. Never has been my bag. Was never introduced to my house. Anything that I know about the Big G or its subsequent religions, I learned from like my peers, my classmates, my friends.
Right.
A lot of very interesting conversations, because the first people that were willing to have a conversation with me rather than trying to convert me were the Mormons, oddly enough. Yeah. So some of my best friends were Mormon and like totally willing to have an honest to God conversation about religion. Destiny says, am actually Native American, grew up on the res.
Nice.
I need a sensitivity reader for Native American stuff. So if you're interested, please let me know.
I forgot that an extreme close-up wasn't.
One of the tenets of my faith is that yours is allowed to exist. Yeah.
That who is?
This.
Oh, that yours is allowed to exist.
Yeah.
I can actually see the comments, but they take a minute to show up on my side. So
I'm actually interested that they come in when they do here.
It's its own bibliomancy. The words show from your own schedule.
I only read one Bible. I have a Book of Mormon, but I haven't read it all the way through yet. I've only read parts of it.
Mark Twain referred to it as chloroform in print.
Ooh.
As an indicator of how one of the great writers felt about the prose, just so you know. Better drink a lot of coffee.
Sip that coffee. Right. Yay! Thank you, Destiny. Just tell me if it offends you. Tell me if I represent them right. Like, I have one Native American character, and I want to make sure that it's not a focal point, but it is like the reader is made aware that he is Native American. King James is chloroform in print. So I never read the Quran, but my mom did. Our mom did. And has like horror stories regarding how hypnotic it was, how much it draws you in, and how very possible and likely that people are going to become fanatic over it. Like, she's like, I get it.
It is outside my experience. I realized early on, because of my own like Gnostic experiences with entities outside monotheism and being like, well, these things obviously are real and they're welcome in my life. So a monotheistic faith
doesn't support that.
Is not for me, because it precludes the reality of the experiences that I'm having that give my life meaning. So I just said no, thank you to all of your, as my husband calls them, fanatical desert-based religions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just not into them. That being said, I like my son's tutor is a Muslim, and he is the greatest guy. He is all of the things, again, just like my Catholic mother-in-law, he's all of the things that faith might be at their best. So, the moral being, of course, that like there can be awesome people in any faith as well as fanatical, problematical people. And that's true with witchcraft too. We have our own fanatical, problematic, missing stair people for sure.
Oh yeah. My experiences with Wicca were not good. Sure. Like, I did, but the high priestess, that's like, she started a coven to get back at the coven who kicked her out. And they just, no. So Jace actually reminded me that our friend Meadow Lamoureux is trained in Arabic and has studied the Quran and all of that jazz, I would like to also pick her brain regarding maybe some sensitivity reading, because I have an Arabic character, Iraqi technically, so Farsi, question mark. But I would like to know if it is offensive to, Persians, that he's like military, and that some of the stuff that he does, of course it's problematic, but I know
that Carmel grew up Baha'i, and so that like she grew up surrounded by Persian chanting, food, culture, studied Arabic. She's not fluent in it, but for me, living with somebody who grew up in essentially a monotheistic cult, like that is both worldly and like immigrant community based, so like marginalized in all of these ways, like a persecuted community, but still also like, there is one God and we chant to them in different languages. It's an ongoing revelation to me to find out what it is to be a Baha'i. So if anybody knows anything about the Baha'i, it's very interesting. Worth knowing.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Kat says, I own several Christian/Catholic Bibles, read some of it. My mom is Catholic, stepmom was raised Catholic, and now considers herself a kitchen witch.
Right.
That's awesome.
You know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I can't because of Corona, is that we are taking Byron Ballard, the author, in February, like it was delayed. We're taking folks to Sicily to do a Strega tour, right?
With Byron?
Byron, yeah. I mean, Byron is an Appalachian, that's her jam. She's a hexcraft and Appalachian witch.
Right.
But she's got like 3 books coming out this year. And
wow.
I was like, yeah, right. I know. Like, what a terrible time for your books to come out, because you can't like go anywhere to share your enthusiasm. So it was scheduled for this February. It's going to be in a year now, but we're going to do a Strega tour. And one of the challenges, Strega is Italian for witch. One of the challenges is that in Catholic countries, like, the Aradia Gospel of Witches is from Italy, right? But people don't run around saying, I'm a witch. They run around saying, I'm a Catholic lady who, just like in the African diaspora, is functioning as a roots doctor or whatever below the radar. So that kitchen witch, like Catholic, but not Catholic, but I put these special herbs in your soup, is totally a thing.
It is absolutely a thing. There was a video going around that I believe that Madame Ansa shared with me, that it's this lady in a beautiful black dress, like dancing in the middle of the street. And like, I recognize it very, very obviously as a, witchy dance. Absolutely. Right. And some people were calling her a witch, and some people were just like, no, she's a good Catholic lady. So it was really interesting, like reading the comments. And right. Yeah.
I have to say, as a person, I live my life pretty loudly, and I'm not a big code switcher, but I really appreciate people who can, in a way, like who are able to be like, no, I'm legitimately this thing and that thing, because I tend to be, one like a fire hose pointing in this direction myself. So I'm always impressed with folks who can legitimately, function in multiple worlds with authenticity in that way.
I try to be both a Buddhist and a witch, like, right. Because I still live by Buddhist, tenets, and there's a lot of like commonality between witchcraft and Buddhism. So
it's informed your life, like, the way that your brain was formed.
Is wired.
Yeah.
It's just like, people ask me like, what is Buddhism like? And I'm like, I don't have a frame of reference. So you're going to have to be more specific in your questions. Like, I was raised this way.
Right.
Like, I've never been Christian. I don't know all the ins and outs. Like,
well, I regret that I have to go. I'd much rather stay here, but I have an appointment in 11 minutes up the street.
All right, no problem. I'm going to be wrapping this up.
Yep.
But it's been awesome talking to you, Madam Ansa.
I miss you, Sako.
And maybe we can do it again sometime.
So yeah, absolutely, and socially distanced bonfires as well. Thank you, everyone, for having me. I appreciate sharing your cyberspace with me and Sako this morning. And I'm not even sure I know how to leave this studio, so you may need to help me.
There should be a red thing saying leave the studio. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Courtney, you kind of like missed the window, but maybe reminds me of talking. Hold on, all the things. Okay. Stepdad is Native American, and my dad doesn't have a step religion, but raised by Christian mother. So grandma is like super devout, like going to church Wednesday. Only people that I that went to church on Wednesday as well as Sunday was Pentecostal. Family I almost had, very intolerant. My parents were both raised in Catholic households, but my mom is now Christo-pagan and my dad is an atheist who's all life on earth with CBT fighting. Not Scientology, question mark. Also, 3 books in 1 year, holy crap. Reminds me of talking to the local division leader, began to practice in I can go on about how I do things about FBI that I'm not, but that's a discussion for another time. We got 9 minutes left. We're gonna, get to comments about. Principles between Buddhism are very compatible, absolutely. Also, mental health, like CBT training and stuff like that, is definitely like Buddhism in action. So, in spiritual codes, which is it helps me communicate with my mom, who raised me African Methodist, Episcopal. My mom and grandmother are Christian, but they have witchy aspects to them, which when it comes to plants, well, I'm glad that they are open-minded, like that they have they're like, yes, I'm, Christian, absolutely. However, like, I still grow my work. My kid is coming out. Religion and is very hard. Which could be why working with Indian communities, I just like offer the things that I normally offer about, or whatever. Is better. Are my earbuds dying? Is that a thing? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's fine because I'm wrapping up anyway. I guess my first try. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad. Yeah, better not great. I'm glad that you drank your morning beverage and talked about your lineage and involvement with Christianity and all of that jazz. Still choppy, yeah. But I have a video going up at 1 p.m. Please come and hang out in the chat, premiere, and I will catch you guys on the flip